MIDDLEKAUFF! Hey!
Why are you gripping the mic so tightly?
Just ready to work, guy. Sunday, no days off. We're just grinders.
We salute you. And we are reporting for duty. As the only question left is, does St. Peter's fly tonight or spend one more night in the NCAA tournament and fly on Monday morning?
I'm pretty sure they're playing at the Wells Fargo in Philly, so I think they live 45 minutes away.
Bus trip.
Bus trip. You just go right over the Walt Whitman Bridge, and
Well, I could see you staying one more night, just like the Four Seasons has all your the Marriott has all your bags in the lobby. You're like, no. We're one more night as NCAA tournament Elite Eight participants.
Well, you know how in the Super Bowl, how they already have a party scheduled if you lose, and like Joe Burrow went to it this year, right? And Tom Brady in the book talks about like the first time they lost, they didn't know what to do, and they realized the party's already set, so you just go and fucking have a couple beers. I think you throw a party. Like, to me, if you're St. Peter's, you treat this like you just made the Final Four and you throw a party for everyone.
Yeah, the only question, right, is does the coach get a job tonight or does he stay at St. Peter's?
Any jobs currently open in the market, feels like?
Probably. I mean, I haven't really been tight in on coaching searches the last couple of days, but there's always a few jobs open. I mean, the Mississippi State job got filled pretty quick. After they fired Ben Howland, they hired the guy from New Mexico State, Chris Jans.
Florida got filled pretty quick. Any Pac-12 jobs? Any Pac-12 jobs open?
Nope.
It doesn't feel like crazy. Didn't you tell me Louisville hired somebody pretty quick? It wasn't that much money.
Louisville hired a guy pretty quick for like $2.5 million. But you never know. Like, does somebody try and steal Eric Musselman away tomorrow? I don't even know what. I don't know. Just thinking out loud.
People leave the SEC. I think Arkansas pays a lot.
NBA job. Somebody else in the SEC. I don't know.
I think the average. I don't know what Hubert Davis makes. Probably obviously not Roy Williams money, but Coach K makes like 10. I'm pretty sure Jay Wright and Bill Self. What are they both making? 8+. I mean,
I remember when UCLA tried to hire Kentucky, it was hire Calipari. It was like, are you going to pay him 10 years, $100 million, or something crazy like that? Which, I mean, Coach K has 5 championships to his own self. 5.
Yeah,
North Carolina has 6 as a program. Coach K's got 5.
Jay Wright's got 2.
Well, it's funny. You get to programs with only 1 very quickly. Jay Wright having 2 is pretty incredible. Like, Florida has 2, but it was basically the same team. Teams with 2, like USF, San Francisco, they got 2. Cal's got 1. But the list of
Nova, I looked it up. Nova's got 3 because remember they won the one in the mid '80s. So that's right. Those extra 2. Now we're in a whole different class, right?
For sure. I mean, that's their top 10 all time.
Because Roy Williams had 3 when he was at North Carolina, correct?
3 at Carolina, and they got 6 all time. Kentucky's got 8. UCLA's got 11. Indiana's got 5. Duke has 5. UConn has 4. Kansas has 3. Nova has 3. But then you're into just like the next group of teams is they could have won them 10 years ago or 100 years ago. Cincinnati's got 2. Louisville's got 2.
So you say on paper it's a pretty historic Final Four.
I mean, I know for me personally, and again, I said this the other day, I feel like in the minority, I root for Duke. I grew up, I liked Duke as a kid. So I root for him. And just Coach K is a story. Like, how could you root against, like there's no way I was rooting for St. Peter's today. I'm sorry, but the underdog is sweet until you get to this point and someone gets beat by 20. Duke, Carolina, especially given you get the whole history and then what just happened to Duke on Coach K's final day with Coach K apologizing to the crowd, shushing the crowd and apologizing to them. I mean, the only way it would get better is if they were to play in the national title game. This is incredible.
I was texting with someone, though, yesterday. I think the one thing that's unique about the Final Four is that if you have a historic Final Four game, it almost is also remembered like a national title game. Like the Final Four, those 2 games in a vacuum by themselves, if one is legendary, the Leitner shot, right, happened in the first game, not the second game. I do think if you just have a big game, it can be remembered for a long period of time. Like if UNC beats Coach K again and then loses to Kansas or Nova, I do think that game will be remembered for a long time just in college basketball, right? Like that's what I think is so special about the Final Four is truly all 3 games, if 2 of the 3 of them are epic games, are remembered forever, not just the natty.
Right.
Hell, you could have a bad natty in 2 legendary Final Four games, and you put up banners for Final Four. That's what makes college basketball.
You get a mini, basically championship trophy.
Well, you cut down the nets. I mean, to me, it was like watching Bill Self, who when I Googled like what's his salary, and then it came up like he has a lifetime contract. Lifetime. Like he can coach there till he dies. I would imagine Jay Wright technically has a life, like he's going nowhere.
Could you imagine making them stand by your lifetime contract, even when you can't remember anybody's name, you're in a wheelchair?
Then
it's really sad. I have not gotten this far in the Showtime movie, but you mentioned the Showtime book to me the other day, and I was like, oh, it's pretty good. So I got it on Audible. I started listening to it this weekend, Friday, and I haven't gotten very far. But I did not know this. There was a guy whose name I forget, who everyone thinks was going to be one of the greatest coaches of NBA history, who's coaching the first year of Magic's rookie year. He gets in like a bike accident, has a bad. Do you know this? Have you listened to this?
Well, in the show, it's a dude from Portland. It's a dude from Portland who was like their offensive coordinator for the legendary Blazer team that had Bill Walton.
Gotcha.
And then Jerry West realized this guy's a genius. Jerry West quits, and they hire that guy. And I guess he's like the vibe I kind of got. What was Pete Carrill? Like this guy was a schematic genius. Now I don't know. Was he like? Did he get along with the? I didn't know that he got injured. I haven't got to that part in the show.
In the book, I guess he gets a brain injury. He still goes on to become the NBA Coach of the Year like 2 years later for the Pacers, but he was. One of the things one of the guys in the book says is, I think it was the Pacers, they were in a huddle. He's like, we're going to run the same thing we ran against St. John's. They're like, he was not all there because of this unfortunate injury that robbed him of his memory. And that was basically the end of his career. But anyway.
I saw someone else, a famous person that was like connected somehow to the Lakers dynasty, called the depiction of Jerry West and other figures like a tragedy on actual human people. Whatever his verbiage was, just incredible. Like people are legitimately like offended.
But you know what's funny about it? Again, I'm like not even a chapter into the book. In the book, it's clear Jerry is a lunatic. Emotionally, it's very difficult for him. But I think you draw the line on
as a coach.
Just like he is consumed with it and losing hurts and all that. But I think there is a line. You say that I'm a lunatic and that I'm hard to work with. You put me curled up in a ball on the ground in tighty whities, and that never happened. We have a problem. I don't care about throwing a trophy that I didn't actually throw.
But people, I don't think boxers. I don't know what year boxers came around, but tighty whities, that's the underwear you wore, right?
It's just an embarrassing look. It's true. That's true. That's what people wore. Tighty whities was anyone wearing something else in the 70s?
Well, I mean, in our lifetime, like when we were kids, like we wore tighty whities tighty whities were just what you wore. My dad wore tighty whities when I first met him as a young child. Like it's just, and then you transitioned with, I would say, mid to late 90s, boxers became very universal. They were not like in Jerry West's heyday in like the late 70s, early 80s. Like Pat Riley's wearing tighty whities.
I'm just saying, you do that. There's a difference to me between that and having a guy throw a trophy to break a window that never happened. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I get it. We're trying to communicate a whole person's life in 1 hour, so we can dramatize a little. But you have me rolling on the ground in tighty whities. We got a problem.
At least they didn't put like a little stain on there or whatever.
That's not realistic.
That'd have been bad. It's like I'm a wiper.
By the way, a couple things as we start the week here, everybody, and wrap up the month of March. Get back on the mailbag. I think we're going to return to the mailbag this week. So iTunes, leave us a review, 5 stars, leave us a question, any question, tell us your favorite bar, all that kind of stuff. Also, should we say this? Scheduled to appear on Tuesday's show?
He could back out, but I feel pretty confident.
Greg Papa.
Yeah, Greg Papa, scheduled to talk to us on Tuesday.
He might be. Is he like the Tom Hanks? Who was hosted SNL the most? Is he you think he's been on the show the most now? This will be his third or fourth appearance maybe on the show.
Funny you bring up Tom Hanks. Graham Bessinger or whatever that guy's name is that always does the interviews. Maybe I had golf on or whatever in the background. I was walking around and then it ended, and then he came up and he was interviewing Tom Hanks, and I just sat down. I literally watched all 30 minutes because it was excellent. But speaking of Tom Hanks, Greg Papa. Come on down, as John Lynch would say.
Andre on the stream. Tidy Whiteys is the topic. Let's hear those Deebo takes, fellas.
They're coming.
Yeah, so let's dive into it. Anything else we need to mention?
Yeah, Greg Papa. What do we got? I think John
Master
Lynch.
starts next week.
I would imagine a lot of, owners. Well, owners can be hit or miss. Actually, I won't feel great about owners. Not that I even care what they say, but general managers and coaches, pretty good chance that they speak this week. And we get our most favorite, the coaching picture.
The coaching picture. What Hawaiian shirt will Andy Reid be wearing?
Well, they're in Florida, so he's got shorts and a Hawaiian shirt written all over him, doesn't he?
I mean, it's good. Like Mike McDaniel is in the coaching picture. Our other favorite part is the GM picture, because then every time it's like, oh, that's Kevin Colbert. But now I feel like I really know who Kevin Colbert looks like after years and years of doing this.
Especially because he's gone, right? I mean, this is it. This is his last photo.
Last photo.
Do you expect to see the Shanahan crew, Kyle, Sean, McDaniel, LaFleur, Sala, Kevin O'Connell? Do you expect them to all be grouped or kind of spread their wings and
I think they're spread. I think the real question, and anyone who's listened for years, we always do a breakdown of the coaching picture and the GM picture. Will Kyle be next to Matt LaFleur? Will they be near each other? Have we had a coaching picture since the allegation we have not had a coaching picture since the Aaron Rodgers rumor last year draft day. So will Kyle and Matt LaFleur of the Packers be near each other?
Always feels too that Bill attends, but he never participates. Do you expect to see Belichick in the photo? Because he really
next
gets
to
two
Josh
photos.
McDaniels.
Oh yeah, I mean we have a lot of new additions. That's part of the cool part, right?
Mike McCarthy's not going to be there.
To me, if you're Mike McDaniel, do you situate yourself next to like in between, establish a little dominance like Tomlin Vrabel? You're just like, I'm here to rumble.
Well, the best was always Jack Del Rio, front and center, legs open.
Yeah,
that was I always. So you're right. You can establish yourself by who you stand next to. All right, let's dive into things, John. Rich Cimini of ESPN covers the Jets. Wrote this on ESPN.com, and it's had a lot of attention on Sunday. The Jets will have to address their wide receiver issue with a high draft pick, unless another Tyreek Hill situation arises. A handful of receivers are entering the final year of their rookie deal: Metcalf, A.J. Brown, and Deebo Samuel. The market's blowing up, and that might make it harder for their teams to re-sign them. The Jets have ties to all three. The coaching staff knows Samuel from their time in San Francisco. To say the coaches have an affinity for Samuel would be an understatement. At this point, there's no indication that any of them are available, but the Jets are just keeping an eye on situations just in case. Know this, it's harder for a fourth-year player to force a trade compared to an older, more expensive player like Tyreek, but hey, you never know. The Jets traded Jamal Adams after 3 years, didn't they? So that is the report, and I think the first reaction that I've seen is one of two things. Let's engage in this, or let's dismiss it because it's stupid to think about. And, we are of the mind that I don't expect Deebo Samuel to get traded here. But I do think I didn't expect other guys to get traded. A year or two ago, you wouldn't have expected Devontae Adams to play for anybody, especially in his prime, but the Green Bay Packers. And we are in March still. This month, Amari Cooper, Devontae Adams, Robert Woods, Hingered, and Tyreek Hill have all been traded.
Yeah, I think one thing that the two superstar guys that have in common that happened, I guess, really over, Devontae feels, less than a week ago, but it was probably a little more than that. The last 10 days, you've seen Devontae and Tyreek. Both the guys spent second contracts on their first team. Now, we can argue, I think money's all relative, and you've brought up the numbers before. One guy was like 51 and the other guy was like 59. But I bet at the time that they got the extension to those guys, to the league, that felt like pretty big contract extensions for both guys, especially Devontae. Tyreek, had some off the field, just question marks, but still, obviously the numbers that just got passed out to those two guys again are historically large, right? They are more money per year than any other position, but they're not more money than they get talked about like the biggest deals ever. Myles Garrett, but Joey Bosa fucking blew by both those two deals, right? It's Aaron Donald, Khalil Mack, still however many years later, what year would that have been? 17, 87, and 90. So like Tyreek Hill, who got this deal that if you just look on Twitter, he got paid like he's Steph Curry or whatever, doesn't even sniff Aaron Donald's deal that now is a joke deal, right? Or Khalil Mack's deal from 2017. So I think average per year is a little overrated. Now, maybe a guy like Parag or Howie would argue that, and I'm sure they would have legitimate takes because depending on specific years, like the average per year does matter, and it definitely matters to probably the narrative around contract negotiations with other players.
Yeah.
But I would imagine the number that truly, like, the owners, like, part of what made the Jimmy Haslam signing off on that contract is, like, you truly guaranteed $230 million. Even if the signing bonus is 60, you have to put that lump sum of cash into escrow. Like, ultimately, Mark Davis had to have $67 million, not 149, right? And Stephen Ross, the 72 or 73 or 75, I see different numbers, but a little over 70 for Tyreek Hill. I just get back to the three names that you're seeing, while they are those two contracts dramatically upped their value, because all three guys are studs. They've all had enormous moments. They've played in a combined Deebo 6, AJ 5, and DK 3 playoff games. They've been in enormous games. That's not even counting their regular season games. When you're in playoff teams, you're playing in huge regular season games and then the playoff games. So these guys, I've seen them in their big moments. They all can dominate. They've been to a combined true 3 Pro Bowls. Combined. As we said last week, those guys have consecutive 11. So I do think the way they're talked about, and I get what Rich is saying, and I get the way social media is saying it, we have to put these 3 guys, who all 3 of them have awesome attributes. We'll get into like how you'd rank them, but all 3 of them are elite, difference-making players at the highest level. I mean, DK has had some moments in this league, because I think he's going to be ranked probably last by the average fan, that are pretty mind-blowingly, incredibly jaw-dropping if you watched it on your couch, right?
Yeah.
He was the most famous of these groups 4 years ago when his shirt was coming off. You're like, no, this guy, and then he lived up to the hype immediately. So I just think we need to pump the brakes on the amount of money that people think all 3 of them are going to get. Like, I think the teams are probably more confident where the number's going to come around than I think the outside noise.
Yeah, I also think as it relates to this particular story, the more people that know you, because if you know somebody and you like somebody, you are more inclined to, want to be around that person than somebody that doesn't know them, right? That's a very obvious basic thing. If you like someone, you're more willing to maybe pay them more money or be a little biased. It's the simplest way to put it, in your evaluation of them. And the more coaches around the league that coached the 49ers, and now there are staffs, 2 more staffs this year than there were last year, or coaches that coached against Deebo Samuel, like Kevin O'Connell now in the Vikings. The more coaching staffs around the league that are coaching staffs are somehow connected to Deebo Samuel, the more places that might be willing to pay him more than the 49ers are willing to pay him. The 49ers might really be willing. I think that's part of this is like, and we saw it with Devontae here, where the Packers were willing to pay Devontae the same amount of money that the Raiders were willing to pay Devontae. But Devontae wanted to be somewhere else. The more places that are willing to pay you as much money as your team is willing to pay you, you know it and your agent knows it, the more likely it is that you end up on another team. Now, again, I don't think Deebo's about to get traded to the Jets or traded anywhere for that matter, but there's 1 year left on his deal. And if the Niners are offering him a reasonable contract of, let's say it's what we think would be even reasonable plus $58 million guaranteed, right? We talked about it the other day based on his history. Now, if he's this player that he is right now for the next 3 years, that's not crazy at all. But let's say it's 60. Let's say 60. Let's say somebody's willing to make him the highest paid receiver in the league and he knows it. But the Niners are willing to offer him $58 million. What happens if he doesn't sign 58 because he wants somebody else to pay him 75?
I think there's a big difference in even Devontae and Tyreek Hill. Devontae had been around that group since 14, so they've had ebb and flows. And same with Tyreek Hill. In the peak of their powers, under no circumstances are those 2 teams capitulating. Like, at the end of the day, this ain't the NBA. This is the NFL. Those 2 teams gave in because they were both willing to. And obviously, like you said, the Packer situation was way different in Tyreek. They would not have done this either team 4 years ago. Like, to me, the 49ers aren't in capitulation mode yet. Just like, oh, yeah, he's not happy. We'll just let him on his merry way and let some other team. Like, that ain't happening, right? Part of it was, like, those other teams, but specifically the Chiefs, who, to me, would parallel the Niners situation if they ultimately wanted to pull the trigger. The Chiefs were willing to part ways. Like, I don't think the Niners, are in the mode yet of, like, Yeah, we'll let it get ugly. we'll argue a little bit. Like contract negotiations at the highest level. TJ Watt, the Steelers in a million years. When I think the Steelers, I think TJ Watt is like represents everything they've been our entire life. It's like it got ugly, it got weird.
Yeah,
that's life. I mean, that's the situation.
The other unique situation here, which is, but I guess Kansas City was this way too. Kansas City, you could argue, was the best place for Tyreek Hill, right? Like if you're Deebo, being with Kyle Shanahan on the 49ers is a pretty good situation to be in. We just saw it last year. But what if privately you're telling your agent, hey, man, I don't want to run the ball 8 times a game. I don't want to play that way. It's not good for my body. That's not who I am. I'll do it. I did it last year. I don't want to be that guy.
He did keep saying it and taking pride, call himself a wide back.
100%. Again, I'm not saying any of those things are what's happening. I just think ultimately the situation, if we removed all the names from it, there's a receiver on the last year of his contract who wants to get paid a lot of money and might not be valued financially by his team as much as he thinks he should be valued, and somebody else really likes him and has a lot of draft picks. That's a story that's a real story in the NFL. Now, I don't think this one's going to happen, but again, I didn't think Devontae was about to leave. So,
yeah, facts.
Okay. There are a few more elements of this, but we also want to tell you about our friends at butcherbox.com/ham. Before we go any further, butcherbox.com/ham, free ground beef for life, 2 pounds in every box for the life of your subscription when you go to butcherbox.com/ham.
Guy, no antibiotics or added hormones. Each box contains 8 to 14 pounds of meat. Depending on the box you choose, that's enough for 24 individual meals. This is your chance to never have to shop for ground beef again, guy. Because every week, once you get a subscription and you get your rotation of meats, 8 to 10 pounds, like I said, 8 to 14 pounds, packed fresh and shipped frozen. You and I have both received these enormous packages, and they come in these boxes, frozen. You just throw it in the freezer. You start cooking whenever you want. I know you had tacos last week based on the ground beef. How do you beat that?
I tell you the ground beef you do the day after tacos. Took the ground beef, dumped the black beans that were on the side in there, mix that up, and now I'm just eating, no bread, no taco, just
little protein load.
Yep, warm it up 8 minutes over the 3 minutes over the sink. I'm just pounding and I'm off and
genius.
Running. So it's a great plan ahead. Plan ahead for your cooking, plan ahead for your eating. And it's not just the ground beef, right? Like John said, 100% grass fed. You get the steaks, you get the free range organic chicken, the wild caught seafood. It's all right there. And right now, you get free ground beef for life when you go to butcherbox.com/ham. Butcherbox.com/ham. 2 pounds of ground beef free in every order for the life of your membership. Go to butcherbox.com/ham to claim this deal.
Do it, yo.
Okay, a lot of the comments are actually all over the place. I'm seeing more go ahead and trade Deebo than I thought I would. Of course, you listen to trade offers. Trading him would be stupid at this point with a quarterback on a rookie contract. Time to load up. The Niners are smart. They get rid of Kittle. Deebo's been injury prone, and the way he gets used might be smart if you could get him for 2-1s. So, do the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan view Deebo Samuel as untouchable? Because the Jets specifically have a lot of ammunition. They've got the 4th pick. They've got the 10th pick. They've got the 38th pick. If the Jets really wanted him, they could make the 49ers an offer that would feel pretty outrageous, right? If you were just doing how many picks do players get traded for? So on the extreme end, and somebody on Twitter just said to me, the Jets wouldn't offer 4, 10, and 38. But what if they got extreme and they did? How untouchable is Deebo Samuel?
Well, I would say the other 2 guys are 2 years younger than him. Both guys, DK was born in December. He's 24. I guess AJ will be 25. Deebo is 26 years old and will be 27 in January. So, despite only being 3 years, he was a senior when he came out. Those 2 guys were underclassmen. In a vacuum, you trade basically any player for 4, 10, and 38, right? That would be a historic haul factoring in. We talked about Mac before. We talked about Jalen Ramsey. Those guys were traded after the draft. So you didn't know what the picks were going to be. And as we saw, the picks weren't that good for either guy. So if you get 4, 10, and 38, the value there is stupid. But to me, the value in a draft is also based on the crop of players in the draft. Last year, can you imagine if you could trade Deebo and get Jamar Chase, Micah Parsons, and some other sweet player in the early second? Okay. This year's draft, I've been told by many people, the difference at pick 12, there is no difference than pick 5. It's not a top-heavy draft. So even 4, 10, and 38, like, ultimately, who are you replacing Deebo with? Now, could you get Garrett Wilson? Could you get a sweet offensive lineman that can, boom, start at guard and then replace McGlinchey? Right? I've heard that Neal and some of these guys can both kind of move, but we've seen them do it before. Yeah, they traded DeForest Buckner, who, like, to me, the defining image of this season, beside, I would say, the playoff win at Green Bay, even trump the Dallas win, right? That the blocked punt and just the moments in that game were just the snow. It was crazy.
Week 18 Rams game.
Yeah, that's another good one, which you're right, because Deebo single-handedly won him that game. I mean, he single-handedly won him that game. He was on a different mission. He ran for a touchdown. He threw for a touchdown. He was fucking remarkable. He
The
had
catch, the Jalen Ramsey dive, couldn't get it, catch. Was...
And then took him in. I mean, guy, they had no timeouts. It was like 50 seconds left. It was insane. He's a remarkable player. He's beloved. And like DeForest Buckner of 2 years ago, who I'm all for value, and I think it's so easy, like the value. Like, well, they traded DeForest Buckner, and we love the value. Pick 13 for this guy, like no-brainer. But then you have to use those picks and get it right. And immediately, like the one thing, DeForest Buckner goes, and he's even better. So it's like there's a good chance for the next 2 or 3 years, if healthy, Deebo Samuel is going to dominate and be a top 10 player. You could use 10, 4, and 38, which I don't think they would offer. Let's just say 10 and 38, which would be a haul. 10 and 38 would blow out of the water what the Chiefs just received and what the Packers just received. Because the Raiders pick was 22. The Dolphins pick, which was the Niners pick, was 29. Could you trade, if you and I ran a team, would you trade pick in a good draft, pick 10 for 22 and 29? You might not. Like if you loved Micah Parsons or Aaron Donald or the guys that are usually there, J.J. Watt historically, right around that value, you would say no. Because you're like, I don't want two picks. John Schneider would say, well, you're picking 2 second-rounders in pick 22 and 29. But you're paying them first-round value. So pick 10, it's why I actually gave the Broncos a lot of, like the trade they made for Russell Wilson. They gave up pick 9, which isn't just, they didn't give up pick 22. Like pick 9 in a vacuum is worth a lot, but in this draft, is it really?
Right.
Like, I think the actual draft factors in. Now, could Garrett Wilson immediately be an elite player? Possibly, because you'd say Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, the last, 2 highest level guys in the last 2 drafts. Now, I know Jefferson didn't get drafted the highest, but have come in and dominate, so it happens. But I think people would freak the fuck out. Because the Niners already feel like they're doing the value move. We'll get into Jimmy a little bit later, right? Like, what are we doing?
Jimmy? This doesn't have the fingerprints of the time that you do a trade like that when you have too many players to afford and you can't afford, you're up against the cap, right? That's not the situation they're about to be in. Eventually,
they have a $27 million quarterback that's not even
once he's gone, John, they're not in that situation anymore. But also, I think what's unique about Devontae and Tyreek trades, both of those guys played with generationally great, all-time great, and still really good, fantastic, best quarterback in the league type quarterbacks, right? Which makes them really valuable because they're making these plays in the playoffs potentially, for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, Wasp. But
three MVPs since 2018
combined between Rodgers and and you could be more really. But
Mahomes could have won at Lamar's year probably too.
Yeah, but because your quarterback is so good, you could argue we're paying a great quarterback. He can elevate somebody else. That we're not going to replace Tyreek, but we can get somebody because our quarterback is so good and we've got other good players. Like part of Deebo, and specifically Deebo not just being one type of receiver, Deebo being good in handoff situations, Deebo being good in short pass situations, makes him particularly valuable to the 49ers with Trey Lance. Like I think Deebo, one of the reasons I think he's special beyond the box score is he can be a great player with Jimmy Garoppolo. Not every receiver can be great with Jimmy, with that type of quarterback. And I would say he has the potential to be extra useful with Trey Lance. So I think he elevates a quarterback that needs a little elevation. in a way that might be harder for, say, like DK Metcalf is more valuable to a team with Russell Wilson or even Drew Lock with a big arm than he is to Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers.
I even think this, and this is where I bet if Mike McDaniel was with us right now, he's like, I think everyone knows Tyreek as this deep threat, which he is. But if you really watch the Chiefs, over the last 3 or 4 years, how often do they throw like quick screens to him and they can end arounds? Like you can get him the ball of his, let's say he touches the ball, between targets and handoffs 12 to 13 times. I think you can get him the ball behind the line of scrimmage. Tyreek, that is. 3 or 4 times with your eyes closed.
I think he's a great fit for Mike McDaniel and Tua.
And I think
Tua actually can kind of throw the ball down the field, but
that's where to me, I mean, you can run that quick screen to DK, but you're running that once a game. To me, AJ Brown is a true outside wide receiver. That's where Deebo, and you and I have talked about this over and over. You could argue he's worth more than the Niners than really he's worth more to any team, unless Mike McDaniel got him, but even more than LaFleur. Because, like, the Niners are very, very dependent on this human being.
So, yeah, the perception of Kyle, right, before he drafted Deebo was that before he drafted Trey Lance, was that he kind of views quarterbacks as a little interchangeable. We definitely think he looks at running backs that way, but then again, that doesn't make him unique. Most of the league views it that way. Does he view Deebo as untouchable? Does he view Deebo as untouchable? To your point, there are just things he can do with Deebo he can't do with other players.
I could push back even on the running back untouchable. Like when a guy is truly the guy, he rides
Yeah,
him.
that's true. That's true. He just maybe views him like most guys. But does he view Deebo Samuel as a guy he would really have a hard time replacing? The same way he views Kyle Juszczyk that way. It just doesn't cost him as much to view Kyle Juszczyk that way.
No, it's an easy one. Even Kittle is relatively cheap, right? If Kittle was a wide receiver, what would he have got after a couple Pro Bowls and the heart and soul of the team? He would have been a $22 million player last year, but instead he plays tight end. Him and Kelsey make like $12, $13 million a year, and their guarantee was nothing. That's where I think this one does get complicated because if Deebo's asking for a $65 million guaranteed, based on his resume, to me, even if I increase his value on like the 49er inflation, what you mean to my brand and my team, I think we're still in the mid-40s. I mean, it's your resume. You're basing everything on what you are going to become, but that's the way contracts work is what have you done, right? Like the reason Mahomes, he was Super Bowl MVP and won an MVP and he was fucking dominating the league, right? Rodgers had just won back-to-back MVPs why he got 150. That's just part of the deal, Deebo.
Well, that'd be part of the Niners' evaluation is do we think he's healthy enough to do it again?
I think it's fair to say that like any NFL player, he could have a 3 or 4, there's an element of luck and thinking right about how to use them. Yeah, I mean, guys, AJ Brown's gotten hurt, right? I mean, guys can get hurt. This guy has a longer injury history, but I guess my point is that I don't know if you can get too caught up. I mean, Nick Bosa has several major injuries, and they're going to break him off, no questions asked.
Yeah.
Isn't that just part of the deal?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Deebo falls into the category of part of the deal. I wouldn't trade him for 4 and 10 in this draft if I were the 49ers.
I wouldn't either.
But part of it is, do we think we can get a contract done with him? Do we think we can get a contract done with him?
But here's where I would if I already knew the results. Like, would I trade him for 4 and 10? Well, yeah, if I knew that I was getting Tristan Wirfs and, Justin
Jamar
Jefferson.
Chase. Yeah,
you wouldn't hesitate. But that's not the way it works because I said, DeForest for 13?
Well,
woo! And then Kinlaw, and now it's like, I haven't seen Kinlaw in 2 years.
You would trade Deebo for Jamar Chase and Micah Parsons right now. A 2-for-1. Player for player. Right.
Yeah.
You would do that,
in a heart.
But that's part of it. You don't know what's behind door 4.
Well, that's why everyone's talking about, like, Packers now got some loaded ammo. Well, yeah, they still have to pick some sweet players. And can you imagine, would you argue the first round, whoever their first round wide receiver is, the pressure on that individual is going to be as high as probably any first round pick this season? Because they're a playoff team. I mean,
yeah.
Assuming they take a wide receiver at 22, the pressure on that guy is immense.
Part of the pressure, would you agree with this? Part of the pressure on that player is kind of looking at that player through Aaron Rodgers' eyes. This is all Aaron's ever wanted, right? More receivers, more talent. It seemed like drafting Jordan Love instead of a guy that could help him was part of the rub several years ago, and it created this rift, this chasm that they've had to. What was the word that Peter King always used during the Brett Favre situation? Was it chasm? A chasm in the locker room. I think that's what I remember watching, like PTI. Like Peter King says there is a chasm in the locker room. That was the word that got used a lot for like a week during the Brett Favre is leaving the Packers story. But, I think that's part of it is how does Aaron, I think what the immediate reaction, part of what made, and this is something that you won't be able to describe to somebody that was like out of the country or asleep for 2 days during that trade. The immediate reaction was partly, Aaron must be furious. And then it turned out nothing's really been said, but clearly Aaron's not furious, right? Because Aaron...
It's been widely reported he'd known for a long time.
That was part of the reaction.
I'd read that the Last Dance photo was more Devontae than him, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's where he was fucking with everybody. It wasn't really about him. That's where, to me, he's got the theatrical bullshit going. It was really all about Devontae.
The word, thank you, Brian, was schism. There's a schism in the locker room. That's what it was. I remember that like report.
That's a good one.
Schism. Jordan says Niners wouldn't get 4 and 10 for Deebo. Yeah, I think we agree. That's a separate. We're just saying like if somebody else got desperate, how desperate would somebody have to get? Because you wouldn't trade him for a 1 and a 2 at this point.
Yeah.
I think we can say that about the 49ers. They wouldn't trade him for a 1 and a 2.
No.
Would this be? They couldn't. Well, you look at them like, what are you saving up for?
Yeah. What are we doing here?
So that report from Chimini was Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, and A.J. Brown. All 3 of those guys coming into the last year of their contract, which makes you wonder, will all 3 of them be back on their teams? At this point, it feels like the level of which some of these guys get traded, maybe one of them gets traded, but would the Jets view all 3? Are the Jets viewing them the same way? Like they're in the same category in terms of this conversation? Are they actually in the same category?
I would say this though: Seattle, every player they've had of DK Metcalf's caliber, they extended and they built around over Pete and John's time. Right? Russell, all the defensive guys, that they drafted that became stars: Earl, Cam, Richard, Bobby, obviously Russell. Tyler Lockett had multiple contracts there. He is a star-driven coach, elite players he extends. Now, it's ugly when he gets rid of them, but he gets rid of them like Andy does with the elite guys after the second contract. So you would say, based on his history, there would be no sense that he would do this. John Robinson, I saw it before we hopped on, at the owners' meeting says, the game plan is to make A.J. Brown a Titan for a long period of time, whatever that takes. I believe him. I mean, look at his history. He hasn't been like the sweet players he drafts, he keeps. Deebo Samuel, you would say the one team of this group that has a history of, now, they didn't pick him. They inherited DeForest Buckner. But I would argue DeForest Buckner is like inheriting, Jim Harbaugh inherited Navarro Bowman and Patrick Willis, and there was never a thought of getting rid of either one of them.
He's my guy now.
So they inherited DeForest. By their sweet team. He was the team captain, the team spokesman, and arguably one of their top 2 or 3 players on the team. And they traded him after they made a Super Bowl run for pick 13. And that was non-Belichick, would you say one of the most, to me, ultimately, Devontae, I don't want to be here anymore. That's happened before. Tyreek, that happens all the time. Not all the time, but teams, cap space, older player, pivot. The DeForest Buckner thing was pretty shocking. That was going to be his first contract extension. Team captain on a sweet team. Great guy. Traded him for pick 13. That was a pretty wow moment. So I would say they're the one team in this history that you go, well, they've done it before. Right? Because eventually it was like, well, after Bill had done it about 3 times, you never know with Bill. Bill just, beside Tom, everyone's fair game. And even by the end, it was like, he tried to trade Gronk. Now, granted, it was an older version, but it's like if I see a report over the next week, they've had discussions because Deebo is making it difficult to meet in a number, or his agent is, I would say that's understandable based on their history. Now, it's only been one guy, but that one guy was a pretty transcendent move for a franchise.
And that guy was, I would say, it's easy right now to believe that Deebo is a sure thing as a player because he was so good last year that everyone fell in love. The whole league. He was one of the biggest stories in the NFL as things got rolled. As the Niners started winning games. DeForest Buckner's body of work was more predictable than Deebo's was at that point in time, right? In terms of here is what he's done, and here's what we believe it will continue to be. Deebo's it's a little more of a question, just given how short his track record is at this point. If he had done what he did last year for 3 straight years, this is a little bit of a different conversation, right?
DeForest was the 7th pick in the draft, and when they traded him, he had missed 1 career game. And you see the guy in person, of all the NFL players you've ever stood around, he has to be one of the most, him and Eric are 2 of the most unique players you'll ever see, right?
They stand out. We used to always comment when we'd see them at Niners camp, like these guys on an NFL field are extreme outliers. Extreme outliers.
So he had missed 1 game, and he was a top 10 pick. Right? Now, I understand that like your value, what your pick is, but ultimately Deebo fell for a reason. He had some injury questions. That was the knock on him. Injuries. Because I think when he played, everyone loved him. They loved him more than these other 2 guys, which I think the cool part about all 3 of these guys is all SEC guys. Obviously, AJ and DK were teammates. Quote unquote, fell in the drafts where receivers clearly go pretty high and all made Pro Bowls and all are really sweet. But Deebo, I would say, was viewed as the best prospect of the 3 coming out of college, but had all the injuries. And just 2 years ago, he came into camp out of shape. So to me, like, AJ, I've never heard a bad thing about. DK, I think people around the league think he's a little diva-ish, but don't get it twisted. I did the math before we hopped on.
Give me the numbers.
Deebo has 167 catches through 3 years. AJ has 185, so that's 18 more. DK has 216 catches. Deebo, 10 career passing touchdowns. AJ?
Receiving.
Yeah, receiving. He caught from a passer. AJ, 24, has 14 more. DK has 19 more. He has 29 career passing, receiving touchdowns. Now, the game changers, Deebo does have the 11.
So Deebo's 21 career touchdowns, AJ Brown's 25, and DK's 29.
But the other thing is DK has 3 in the playoffs, AJ has 2 in the playoffs, and Deebo has 2 in the playoffs. So it's not like these guys Deebo, no, these other guys have fucking dominated in January. Those guys have been more productive than Deebo. Deebo's production was unlike anything we ever saw, but again, it was shot like a rocket ship for about 10 games. Say what you want about DK, and I'm not the biggest, I would not trade for DK. I would not feel comfortable giving him $20 million a year.
I'd rather have Deebo than DK. I'll say that.
But his resume speaks for itself. It's a dominant resume. Dominant.
Playing with Russell Wilson, as someone pointed out in the chat.
Yeah.
To be fair. It was a good match for him, right? He would not have put those numbers together playing with the 49ers, Jimmy Garoppolo.
He made some plays on quick screens taking him to the house.
That's true.
I think we all agree he's a physical freak.
And maybe the Niners would just throw jump balls to DK in a way they don't throw to other receivers with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Now, I would say the best quote-unquote receiver in this class, I would put AJ on a clear tier as the number 1. We saw him, right? When the
Remember,
Niners
we had this
the Titans,
conversation on that day.
He was a monster. Now, you could argue Deebo is one of the best quote-unquote football players in the league. But all 3 of them have some pretty easy arguments, right? And Deebo's more my value to you. AJ's just I could put together 5 more years of just being could I be the best receiver in the league one day? And DK's my resume speaks for itself.
Yeah, and I'd say one day for AJ Brown, his thing is I'm playing with Ryan Tannehill. We're not exactly the most dynamic passing offense. Now, he can throw the ball down the field. I'm not saying Tannehill stinks, but he's not playing with Russell Wilson either, right?
Here's what I know. The Niners would not trade Deebo straight up for DK. Seattle, who knows? Maybe they just be over the diva-ish. The Titans would definitely say no, DK straight up for AJ. The Seattle might do that deal. The 49ers, I think you would think about, with Trey, a huge target as a thrower. If you had to pay one of them, AJ just bigger, stronger, more likely to go, the next 5 years, you would just bet on the physical history. The Titans 100% would say no, AJ straight up for Deebo. And I know I've talked to the GM. He thinks Deebo's a star. It's not like they don't think Deebo's a stud. They watched him in that game, single-handedly try to keep that game close. But AJ, I mean, him and Justin Simmons are the best two players on their team, on a team that wins 12 games a year, every year, now for the last several years, right? They just go to the playoffs.
Yeah. But again, I
guess
do
they got
think
Derrick Henry too.
I do think when it comes to Deebo, the number one issue is that he has not been healthy all 3 years. I think if you get that guy you saw last year healthy for 3 years, which again, part of if he has to be a running back, that makes it harder to stay healthy, even though we did it last year, then it pushes him a lot closer to just as valuable as AJ Brown as doing it for 1 year.
Yeah, maybe better consistent. Like the one thing you would say from a throwing standpoint, the head coach has been very hit or miss with the trust of their quarterback. And the best year Jimmy, it felt like, was as a thrower would have been the Super Bowl year. Deebo was a rookie. Like, obviously, Russell's the best quarterback of this group. And even Tannehill, everyone shitting on him at the end of the year, has been pretty good, for a couple years throwing the football, right?
Yeah.
Statistically, he's been a top 10 passer in the league before. So that.
But
that
I don't believe he's a
into
top 10 quarterback. I mean, whatever the numbers say.
No, you know what I'm. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a legitimate starting quarterback year in, year out of a playoff team.
But
Jimmy might be too, but he can't stay on the field.
But my ultimate point on Deebo as it relates to this group of guys is I think he has a chance to be as good as A.J. Brown, like as on the same tier as A.J. Brown in terms of the best receivers in the league. It feels to me, my concern is it's going to be a little harder for him to be that, given kind of the way it feels like he almost has to play to get, let's say, not equal production, but he's got 21 touchdowns. AJ Brown's got 25, so pretty equal production. Specifically him as a run, the collisions that he's involved with around the line of scrimmage do concern me.
If I tell you all three of these guys get contract extensions with their incumbent team, does any one of the three get over $50 million guaranteed?
It's tough. I mean, AJ Brown, I guess, could play this year without a new contract. They pick up a fifth-year option, and then
he's a second-round pick. They're all second-round picks.
Oh yeah,
so
crazy. Of course,
they're just free.
AJ
agents.
Brown feels like a first-round pick. Yeah, I could see AJ. The problem would be even right now, he's not like if he had played 16 games last year and had 11 touchdowns like he did the year before.
How many games did he play last year?
13. We missed 4 games. 4 is not nothing.
What was his production last year?
AJ Brown was 5 touchdowns, 63 catches. I mean, that's not AJ Brown's great. Production. Now, again, the team he plays for, the way they play, 52 receptions, 70 receptions, 63 receptions.
How many touchdowns the first 2 years, though?
8, and then 11, and then 5. And maybe Derrick Henry takes away some of his catches. His touchdowns, I mean, right?
Yeah, you probably don't throw as many fades within the 5 as you do just hand it off to the big fella.
But
Deebo's like, they hand me the ball down there.
I guess what I'm talking through with myself is like, that's true. I do feel like AJ could be a 50 million plus guy.
Yeah, to me, if one of them were to get traded, they'd be a lock to get well over that, right? Because if they're getting traded, that means someone's paying him a lot of money.
I mean, he hasn't played 16 games since his rookie year.
Who hasn't? AJ?
Mm-hmm.
So him and Deebo have that in common, both some injury issues. And both clearly are very valued in their own offense. DK is a little interesting, right? Because, he lost his greatest asset. So you could argue, like, to me, where I keep going back to, like, why I don't think he'd get traded, like, he still is one of their best players, and they're not trying to reset. Like, they're not blowing it up. They're not the Texans or the Lions, right? Even though that feels like that. They're not thinking like that. And he still gives them their best chance to win, having him on the field.
I also would say, the game we saw from A.J. Brown on Thursday Night Football, this is kind of like you sign a guy because he had a great game against you, was by far, he had one other game on that level last year. Now, again, he had like 8 for 33 against the Chiefs and a touchdown. That's an amazing game. He had 7 for 91 against Buffalo. I mean, they needed it. They won by 3. That's a hell of a performance. 7 for 91. When everyone knows you're getting the ball. He had 10 for 155 against Indy, and he had 11 for 145, and it just felt like first down after first down, back-breaking first down against the 49ers. But he, you know, and
I
he
think
was
it's
coming
fair
off
to say
injury.
when he's on, he's as unstoppable as an outside force as are in the NFL.
But he also had a 3-catch, a 4-catch, a 3-catch, an injury, a 3-catch, a no catch, and a 2-catch, a 4-catch. Whereas Deebo, I would say of the three is the least reliant on external factors. Like as your team gets worse, he becomes better because you don't need a clean pocket in 1.5 seconds to get him the football. You know,
Who's that?
Deebo.
Yeah.
Like ultimately, a jack of all trades, master of none. Deebo kind of feels like he's a master and the jack of all trades. If he does what he did last year for multiple years, he is in some ways more valuable than these other two guys.
I do think that Deebo and even AJ, because of what they've meant to the team under their coach and their GM, and with the quarterback, and I know the Niners have a new young quarterback coming on, we think, their value is still really immense. Those guys know him so well. The DK thing, you could just argue, like, could I get pick 10? And then all of a sudden I got a couple really high picks, and I get to just get Garrett Wilson instead and kind of reset my salary cap with Seattle that's been a little out of whack. That would be maybe you talk yourself into it. To me, if one of these guys can get traded, my bet would be on DK, even though I think it's very, very unlikely. And it'd just be like, are the Jets really going to trade pick 10 for DK? Because I'll tell you this, if that happened, if you said DK Metcalf has been traded to the Jets, he's going to sign the Amari Cooper contract. Let's say 5 for 100, 60 guaranteed, 20 year, or whatever. Let's say it's 84. So even if it's like 21 a year to give him a little bump, I'd be like, I don't like that match. I think that's going to blow up in everyone's face.
Yeah, yeah. I also think, what are you doing if you're not giving your young? I mean, again, we're not talking about actually like, would you necessarily trade Deebo in this conversation? We're talking about how he relates to these other players.
I'd understand why the Jets would do it, right?
Yeah, because Deebo actually, would Deebo make more sense for them than DK or AJ Brown because their quarterback is a little bit erratic down the field and just throw the ball 2 yards down, offensive coordinator, same type of guy. Like I understood why Tyreek made sense for them. People said, well, he's small, and Zach Wilson. We talked about his kind of target radius is wide, his splatter chart or whatever you call it. If we gave him a gun and then pulled the thing close to us, he'd be bullets all over the place on the silhouette paper. But okay, then let's do what he does well and just get this guy the ball and get my playmakers in position to make plays.
He's not like Bobby Lee Swagger. I watched Shooter. It was just on Netflix. So
what's his last name in that? Is it Swagger? Is that what his name is?
Bobby Lee Swagger.
His name is Swagger.
Yeah, Bobby Lee Swagger.
That's a good watch. Isn't that a good one? That one's on a lot too.
That's I think Netflix it's one of its trending movies. So I do a lot like when
I did Once Upon a Time
and
I did Once Upon a Time in Hollywood this weekend.
How was it? Where do you find that?
I just rented it. I've rented that movie probably 3 times. I should probably buy it because I've spent $12 renting it.
What does it run you? $3.99?
Yeah,
it's not a bad rental. That's an easy.
Movie.
They must know human psychology because $3.99 feels like 50 cents when you press the button. You're like, it's fucking nothing.
What number would it? What number? Like
I've done before.
7.99?
Super boredom. I've done it one time.
$20?
Yeah, I've done the $19.99. It was just I was desperate. It was probably pre-streaming is big. I would never do that now. I would say once you get $9.99, you're like, do I really need to? I got a million free movies. Why am I? Especially now that it's not like there are new like The Departed and these movies that are just transcendent movies. It feels like come out anymore. $3.99 is an easy one because you can even someone like recommends an older movie, and you realize it's not on one of the streaming. Like, oh, spent $3.99 to watch that thing. It feels like nothing.
Yes.
You can even argue $6.99 would feel like a little more, right?
I think it would. But you're so conditioned now. It's so funny the things you like wouldn't spend $5 on and the things you throw $5 away on, like one guy, like you're like, I don't know if I should do it. You spend $9. You can spend $20 like that at the mini mart just when you're 10 minutes from your house. You know what I mean?
Oh.
But you wouldn't spend for 3 hours of entertainment $20. But for like 2 Smart Waters, a beef jerky, a pack of gum, a Mamba, and a bag of chips.
Are you able to watch a movie that you've already seen without grabbing your phone?
I didn't grab my phone watching that movie.
You just sit there and watch the movie?
Yeah, I did.
That's impressive.
But I would say I do. Yeah, I mean but I love that. That's one of my favorite movies. So
That's a goodie.
that's
That's a goodie. When doesn't Brad Pitt beat up Bruce Lee?
I was thinking about this last night. Is that my favorite scene? It might be my favorite scene. But then you can't. It's hard to beat flamethrower scene.
That one's pretty good too.
I mean, it's just the final fight scene. It's pretty great.
That's a pretty good one. Is there a scene early on in that movie where Leo's like talking to or is it Brad Pitt, like having the one-on-one interview with like the young Asian girl, or she's the actor? Remember, it was really awkward. I saw it in the theater. Isn't there like they're on set?
You mean the younger, like the 4-year-old girl?
Yes, is she an actress?
Or
in the
she's
movie?
8. She's 8. Yeah, not Asian, but yes, the 8-year-old, and it's Leo, and that's a great.
She's just a
scene,
really young girl. She in the
gotcha. 8-year-old girl. The scene where like Leo gets his mojo back, it's like you're watching the movie they're shooting or whatever. I love that. That's a great scene too.
Yeah. That's a good one. I went to the theater when that thing came out. Watched it by myself. Yeah.
I don't remember the first time I watched it, but I know
I'm not a huge solo movie guy. I know Greg Papa, big solo movie guy.
But I've done it make a note of that
occasionally on a big boy film, but they don't exist anymore.
Solo movie ranks for Greg Papa. Ultimate Niner. Imagine the Jets. You go to 4 and get Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan ain't drafting Kayvon Thibodeau.
Everyone's got picks.
I don't think Kyle Hamilton will be there at 10.
Your Highness with Danny McBride. Not seen it.
No, sounds good though.
Danny McBride.
Yeah, Danny's had a good run.
All right, John. We did see this tweet from Matt Mayoko. At the NFL annual meeting in Palm Beach, Florida, where all teams have gathered for the next few days, the 49ers are likely to remain patient. They seem willing to hold on to Jimmy Garoppolo for a while to allow him to get healthy and see if any trade scenarios materialize. Likely to remain patient.
What's the rush?
Likely to remain patient. So, I mean, at this point, it feels like Garoppolo will be throwing one day again, and he'll still be a 49er. Now, is he throwing just on his own? Is he throwing in Santa Clara? But he's going to be throwing somewhere for somebody around 4th of July weekend, right? Wasn't that the date as a 49er?
Yeah, to me, the question is when
Capicola?
training, I think the question is now, if they don't do some trade with the Carolina Panthers, which feels like the only one possible, the one where Sam comes back and they trade Jimmy Garoppolo injured, which they would have done already. And who knows, maybe it happens at the draft. We'll see. If that does not take place, I think the only question is, do they cut him on the first day of training camp when he gets his physical, or do they open up camp and do a quote-unquote a competition? Or do they name trade? I don't know how they do it. But to me, that's the question mark, if they make it past the draft. Because I still think the draft, marquee players get traded on draft night. Weird shit happens on draft night. I'd just say everything's on the table. I think the Deebo, A.J. Brown, DK, like those names, I could see just a Mort report, like, names to keep an eye on, just not saying it's going to happen, but weird shit happens on, I would say, mid-Thursday through mid-Friday, that kind of 24-hour stretch, and even into probably the second round, right?
At this point, it feels impossible that Jimmy Garoppolo gets traded on April 28th, which is we're a month away from the first round of the NFL draft. But I mean,
unless the Panthers at 6 take a quarterback, let's say they take Malik Willis, and they go, we don't really feel comfortable with Sam Darnold being the kind of mentor. Let's take a mentor. We'll pay that salary. We'll eat a little bit and trade you, assuming the Niners would even want to do that. But I'm saying that to me would be just kind of a Hail Mary thing, which again still doesn't feel that likely. But they'd have to. They're not coming to.
They'd have to pay $27 million for their backup quarterback because Jimmy's not renegotiating to go be somebody's backup quarterback.
No, but Jimmy Garoppolo would be their starting quarterback.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were saying be a mentor as a backup.
You'd be a mentor as the starter, like Malik Willis, Trey Lance style.
Mm-hmm,
like you basically just do the same thing, and you go, God, look, it worked pretty well. They raved about the guy. That to me would be the place. But if that's not the case, like here's what the Niners can't do. If training camp starts, you either cut him, trade him, or he shows up. There's no like, this ain't you're throwing on the side at home. That's fucking bizarre. Like I do not see them doing that. If he's on the team come training camp, they're either getting rid of him because he can pass the physical, then they owe him $0. He could sign for $1 million. They don't have to eat anything. Or he's coming to practice. Like, I don't see it an option. Like, why wouldn't you just allow it? Like, that would be weird. And I don't think they want any part of that.
Well, him being at practice would also be weird. So weird is not the standard.
Less weird that they couldn't trade him, that not, like, we don't want you around or whatever. I don't think that's on the table. I don't think they would do that because I think Kyle would want him.
Yeah, the question is, to me, what would be weird is if he's there and also getting reps as the same number of reps that a guy in a quarterback competition gets, not the number of reps that a number 2 quarterback gets. And honestly, even getting the reps that a number 2 quarterback gets is kind of crazy. Like, Trey Lance should get more reps than most number 1s unless you're afraid of his arm being sore. He needs as many reps as possible. Nate Sudfeld can get the 3s and the 4s.
Yeah, you should argue Trey gets 90% of them, and then Nate gets a couple, because if Trey did go down, you'd need him to operate.
And there's no rule. There's no, Tom Brady gets a different number of reps than Sam Darnold gets, even when both were starting quarterbacks in the NFL, potentially. Tom might want more, or Tom might want less. Whatever he wants is what he gets.
Yeah.
But so you can manipulate. It's not like, well, the CBA says that the first team quarterback has to get 18% more throws than the second and third quarterback combined. So any throws Jimmy Garoppolo has are potentially throws that Trey Lance otherwise should be making. Now, we've been at camp. There's a lot of useless throws being made. So I'm not going to act like, 10 extra throws every practice to whatever, some undrafted rookie receiver is like the difference between winning 10 games and winning 7. But you get the point.
Pretty important for Trey to throw with the 3 guys, Ayuk, Kittle, and Deebo.
And also, there's just on the basic level, if it's my team now, it's a little harder for it to become my team if the guys whose team it used to be is still there.
Yeah. Well, that's why.
If we care about that kind of thing.
Well, that's why already being at this point, like John Lynch is, by the time you listen to this, maybe he's already spoke to Mayoko and Barrows and all those guys if they're there. And if, who knows, maybe he does a Zoom. But he can say whatever he wants. And I like John Lynch. I feel like he's going to be lying. We prepared for this situation. We had budgeted. Yeah, this was your worst case scenario. Like, you would have liked to already moved on and had your value and just been off to new deals, right? Yeah. Or just new, whatever you're working with, right? It's like having to deal with Deebo's contract and Nick Bosa's contract. Like, that's NFL business, right? Having a quarterback that you no longer want to be the starter, that you wish you could have unloaded, still on the team, come when all the players report in the next couple weeks just to start working out, was not the plan. Like, and to me, there's nothing wrong, and I hope they do this. Like, they won't, but this wasn't an ideal situation, but we're here and we'll deal with it. This is the NFL. Like, that would be very refreshing. Like, we didn't want this, guys, but they can't say it.
Can't tame. He says Jimmy would. I think he's saying Jimmy would fit in. I don't think Jimmy would be a problem, but it just makes it harder for Trey Lance to fully grow if Jimmy's there taking up a little bit of the space.
Well, I mean, honestly, I got to give the guy credit. I don't think he's had a processed carb in 20 years, and he does a good job on the Subway commercial.
I think he's pretty good in that commercial. I said that a couple weeks ago, that I think if given the chance, he could be as good as Baker, and people thought I was vastly overrating his Subway ability. But I think he does what's hard. Like, one of the hardest things I think probably is that kind of, where like Nona says she doesn't cook and Jimmy has to react to that shocking information. And I think he does a good job. What's the name of the meat that he pronounces? Is it like capricola or something like that?
The Italian, yeah. It's like the good Italian meats.
Jerome on the stream says, goal is to trade him. Not going to rush a hangnail injury in camp, though. If he's still there, he's sitting. You could definitely have that situation. Yeah. Jimmy's dealing with a hangnail or an ingrown toenail or excessive ear hair, and they're working on it, You go manscaped.com/ham, but
Yeah. Jimmy's off in the corner in his Travis Matthews outfit.
Patrick says Colts traded their horrible QB the smart way, super quick, and for whatever they could before the other quarterbacks moved.
But he wasn't that horrible, and he's healthy.
But they did trade him super quick and before the other quarterbacks moved. That's a fact.
And before they even knew Matt Ryan was a possibility. They're just like, get this guy out of here. Let's punt.
It will be, you could just hit on it. Interesting if there's Q&As, kind of what John Lynch says, right, when the media's gathered around him. That is just kind of interesting. We always like deciphering his This is
And
body language.
he's not great at lying, right?
No,
He
he's not.
struggles with it. It's not his. It's hard because I here's who I think is great at it. An underrated, doesn't get any credit, is Andy, because he's always smiling and he's like, we love the guy. Meanwhile, he's like trading him. It's just like Andy is just fantastic because it's always smiling, bringing up how he ate a double cheeseburger. Meanwhile, he just cut Frank Clark. He's like, everything he's done for us, double cheeseburgers, so he kind of gets you off the scent. Well, John, I think it's hard for him to bullshit. I think he really struggles at that. You kind of got to be – I think even Kyle has a little bit, while he's candid, he's good at kind of just cutting you off and be like, we're not going to talk about it.
John Lynch was a player. You didn't really have to lie. I mean, you sucked on that play. You got to do better on that play. You got you're just honest.
Yeah.
Right. The coaches, after a long time, you probably get Brad on the stream says, touch his ear, goes to I watched some of the Browns press conference the other day. All three guys, when they sat down, first thing they do, immediately crack their bottle of water. Like, I was backstage thirsting and here I am on the stage now. I need my bottle of water. John Lynch he was ripping. You remember that press conference? He was reaching all over his bottle of water, as if he just had to drink.
I saw that. I did click on it. I lasted 2 minutes, but Barry, first thing he does is uncorks the thing.
It's like, what, dude? You didn't have a chance for water. Matter by Nature, thank you. Says, did Jimmy get thumb surgery? That can be his insurance getting that $7.5 million injury settlement. Jimmy can get his thumb operated on right before his physical.
To me, that would be pretty risky given, let's just hypothetically say it's a 4-week recovery. Let's just say the surgery. I'm just going to pick a date, right? 4 weeks. That means he would miss all training camp. So even if they cut him and he got the $7.5 million, he'd have to he'd be fucking himself a little bit, right? Unless he realized there's nowhere to go, you might as well just take the 7.5.
Yeah. But so he didn't get thumb surgery. He got shoulder surgery.
Yeah.
But
I could see them maybe his thumb is still bad and they have to go to arbitration. My thumb still doesn't work. And he's like, yes, it does. We clear you. This guy's from Stanford. Oscars tonight?
Apparently. Lynch can't deflect. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. He just doesn't want to. You have potential. You have one of the all-time great commercials. Pinocchio knows. You all have potential in each of you. I don't remember exactly how it goes. That's a good commercial. All right. On that note, any other things we didn't mention today? Oh, by the way, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I'm wearing this Buck Mason hoodie that I'm wearing for those of you watching the stream. Have not worn on the stream before. Just got it this weekend. It's brand new. Just came.
Paid my own money for it. Is that creamsicle?
Yeah, it's like a cream. It's not like a stark white. I'd say it's a cream. Did you get one like this?
No, these are my shorts though.
Ooh, I like those. Give us your review.
They're elite because now I can separate the shorts, like my basketball shorts that I use at the gym and I sweat in, and those will just get rotated. And then I just got 2 of these that'll just be for wearing at home. They're just lounging to be around here. And if I need to go to the store or whatever, can do it.
You can wear underwear with those 100% of the time?
0% of the time.
Free ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, I'm free ball probably 50% of the time no matter what. So it's I'm probably a unique case.
I'll remember that next time I see you in jeans.
Yeah. I rarely wear underwear with jeans.
BuckMason.com/ham. And, they're not paying us this week, but we think it's a great product and the promo's still out there. So go get it while you can.
Yeah, go get it.
All right.
Go get it.
There'll be reports of things happening this week, so we'll be here. Can't wait. Master starts next week. Not this week, but next week.
Yeah, a week from Monday it kind of kicks off.
And Tiger hasn't bailed yet. Is there a deadline? I read he might participate in the par 3 contest, which would actually feel like a big deal, wouldn't it?
I would imagine the deadline is Monday or Tuesday before, he bows out, someone takes his spot. So it's maybe he's taking it up there to the wire. Maybe he legitimately has to see, can I walk? If I walked 4 straight days, what does it feel like? Because there was a report on Twitter from, I think this thing called Fried Egg. I think they were, a guy that used to work maybe at CBS Sports or whatever. And they have a podcast called Fried Egg. And it was that they had gotten reports out of his home course in Florida, which is either Seminole or one of those sweet ass fucking places, the Grove 23, or that he's been walking all week. And it's one of those like, that's not random, because I bet if he was just fully healthy and going to be playing the Masters in 2 weeks, he would be practicing in a cart or what. It's not, you wouldn't even be, you just do however you practice. But I think part of it is like he's walking and Joey LaCava showed up carrying the bag. So it's like, what is going on? Now, my educated guess still, I think that he does not play this in 2 weeks, and he ends up trying to play at St. Andrews, which is historically pretty flat, and it's like, known as the greatest golf course in the world, right? He's won it before, which is the historic, and that would be something that, like, be pretty big. I do think, I've never been to Augusta, and, TV doesn't do it justice, but every single one of these guys said it's the hardest course to walk. The undulation of the course is
Well,
pretty
I
nuts.
remember a graphic from last year. One of the holes, like the difference between the tee box and the green. Like, there's always one of which hole is it? And they've got like a bunch of buildings showing you the difference between the elevation of the tee box and the green. That there's a few of those. Does that sound familiar to you?
I mean, honestly, it could be the par 3 12th that they all hit in the water.
I think it is
Tiger
a par
won it.
3. Yeah, I think it might be.
Because you know how you just kind of walk from the green, the tee box kind of feels like it's just in the middle of nowhere. And I think the green, because the hole looks insanely easy, and they all hit in the water. I think that hole is really tricky with your eyes and the undulation of the green. I think the trees block off the wind that actually hits when you hit it too high. If he does play, I do think that'll be a pretty big story.
How about if Phil shows up and no one shakes his hand? Phil just walking around the practice green trying to say hi to everybody. Everyone ignoring him. Can't be seen talking to you, Phil.
I'm always a sucker for the dinner menu. So I wonder what Hideki is gonna bring. I bet fish is definitely involved, because I've seen some Instagrams with him over the years of like, if you look at Hideki, he's we all think he's 40 because he's built. He's 29. He likes.
So why would he eat fish?
Well, I've just seen him have some enormous like sushi dinners. Like,
I see.
I followed his caddy after he won the Masters, and he just tweets sometimes when they throw parties. I think Hideki, throws back some sushi fucking everywhere, sake. I think Hideki gets that belly. Again, guy, he's 29. He
walks a lot.
Well, a lot.
He walks 4 days a weekend, not 2. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging with us, and have a great week.
All rise.
Adios, pelota. Let's wrap.